Howdy y'all, this is Losman here, and it is Sunday night, so that means, hey, another weekend roundup. Alright, today is November 24th, and it is getting close to the end of the year, especially given that, Thanksgiving's coming up this week, and Christmas is coming pretty soon, so we've got about 5 more weeks left in the year, and it's been an eventful year. Quite a bit's going on, and I certainly am looking forward to 2020. But 2019 wasn't too bad either. So let's go ahead and get started on discussion topics for tonight. All right. This morning I was looking at an article, and they were talking about how Doctor Sleep, uh, the follow-up film to The Shining, didn't do so well. And the article was basically speculating that, has Stephen King finally hit his its its limit? Is are we done with Stephen King movies because this one didn't do so well? Well, that got me thinking. That's kind of a silly thing to really talk about because whoever wrote this article obviously isn't aware of Stephen King's track record with movies, given the fact that Stephen King has probably had more adaptations of his work than any writer in existence. I mean, honestly, I do believe that may be the case, although I'm sure I'll get corrected on that. But let's just say that Stephen King is one of the most prolific authors who who's had his work turned into TV shows and movies. That's a given. I mean, that's for certain. I will say this though. So whoever came up with this article, this idea, you're about 20 plus years after the fact, because the same thing was said about Stephen King, and this was said about the movie The Shawshank Redemption, which I think is one of the best adaptations of any Stephen King novel. I mean, I've actually read the Shawshank Redemption. It's actually a short novella. It's called Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption. Now, if you've read the story and you watch the movie, there's some differences. I mean, namely that Red's not a black gentleman in the story, but that's okay because you know what? Hey, maybe it's because he's Irish. Well, but that being said, when the Shawshank Redemption came out, it didn't do as well in the box office. I mean, I imagine it did okay, not great. And it was critically acclaimed, though. I believe it was even nominated for an Oscar, but lost out. I think Forrest Gump basically kicked the crap out of a lot of movies that year. I believe so, yes. And let's just say that in the 35 or so years, is it 35 years? 25? No, 25 years that Shawshank has been released, it is easily one of the most wonderful and amazing movies ever made. And to think that that movie not doing well in the box office would have spelled disaster for Stephen King, that's very short-sighted, and not well. Not let's just say that's not good research or good writing. You're looking for attention. Okay, that being said, Doctor Sleep is an amazing movie. I even put out a little video about a couple weeks back talking about it. It's outstanding. It's a great story. And I will predict that in 10, 15, 20 years, it'll be one of the top Stephen King adaptations of all time. I mean, it will join Shawshank Redemption. It'll join The Shining. It'll join, Carrie. And it's going to be in that pantheon of amazing movies based on Stephen King novels, and I think it was even better than it, well, at least better than the second one, that's for sure. But so, if you haven't seen Doctor Sleep, go watch it. But I mean, if you want to wait till it comes out on video, that's fine. Just go out and check it out. It's not a failure of a movie. It is an outstanding movie. And with that being said, I am going to also give you some examples of other movies that were box office bombs or box office disappointments that will go down as some of the great movies of all time in the sci-fi and horror realm. First off, I've got this movie Upgrade. Now, Upgrade made about $8 or $9 million when it came out last year, or was it 2 years ago? And you know what? Low-key movie, Blumhouse, directed by Lee Wanell. Upgrade is one of the most outstanding action sci-fi movies ever made. When I watched it, I was like wowed. I mean, the reaction I got from this movie, I had not felt since watching like RoboCop or Predator. Now, granted, I've seen great movies in the past 30 years, but I mean, the impact that Upgrade had for me was that same feel of holy shit, I'm watching something amazing. This movie didn't make a lot of money in the box office, but I truly think that this is one of the great movies. I even had it in my top 10 last year. This is an amazing movie. It's an action sci-fi movie, but with a lot of gore. And Lee Wanell, come on, Lee Wanell, wrote Saw. He wrote, was it Insidious? But no, he's one of the great writer directors of our era. So definitely check this out if you haven't seen it. Another movie that didn't do so well in the box office, but is greatly regarded by the fans of sci-fi and horror, Event Horizon. Now, Event Horizon is kind of one of those movies that I've never understood why critics didn't like this movie. It has a very low Rotten Tomato score. Now, I know opinions on Rotten Tomatoes aside, generally critics didn't like the movie. But fans of horror and sci-fi love the movie. I mean, because it's probably one of the best sci-fi movies of the past 25 years. And it certainly has one of the most gross, use of special effects. I mean, it literally was Hellraiser in space. Probably a better Hellraiser movie. I mean, hell, if this had been Hellraiser 3 or 4, it would have been amazing. I mean, how Pinhead showing up would have made it, whoa, but not that he was necessary. But Event Horizon is one of my all-time favorite movies. It's definitely one of my favorite sci-fi movies, and it is, in the 23, 24 years since its release, I consider it one of my all-time best favorite sci-fi horror movies of all time. I mean, joining Upgrade and other movies that are out there. So, Event Horizon, you know what? Don't worry about what the critics have to say. Only complaint about the movie, though, is the editing toward the end of the movie is a little, not so great, and that's mainly because of the editing. They cut out about 20 plus minutes of the movie, and believe me, one of the great discoveries of all time will be if they can find that lost footage, because a director's cut of this movie would be the most grandiose event ever, but not likely to happen. Another movie that didn't do so well in the box office, or did okay, but not as great as they had hoped, but will go down as one of the greatest sci-fi movies of all time, Serenity. Based on the TV series Firefly, Serenity, when it came out, was what the fans were hoping for. It was a follow-up to the, ironically enough, popular sci-fi series that only lasted one season. I mean, it seems like one of the great wishes of every sci-fi fan out there is, can we get another season? Why didn't we get another season of Firefly? I was one who didn't watch it when it first came out, but I certainly caught it, in reruns and on DVD and Blu-ray. And it's an outstanding series, probably one of the best TV series of the past 20 years. And Serenity was an amazing follow-up film. Granted, it had a sad ending, but it was uplifting. It was a great story, great special effects. The cast was impressive, and it's wonderful. And this beautiful steelbook is awesome. Another movie that I think is probably one of the most critically acclaimed and most amazing sci-fi movies of the past 20 years. And I'm throwing this up there with movies along the lines of like 2001 and, those kind of movies. The pantheon of sci-fi movies. Children of Men. This is amazing. I don't even know how to describe this movie other than the fact that it is, without a doubt, one of the most bleak, depressing, but brilliant sci-fi movies ever made. Just wow. If you've never seen this movie, you need to add it to your watch list. It is a timeless story. It is a dark story, a sad story, but it's amazing. The cast, you have Julianne Moore in there, you have Clive Owen. It's kind of a sad tale of our future, a potential future, but it does offer hope. And this movie is, without a doubt, one of the greatest sci-fi movies ever made. Definitely dark, very disturbing, well, mildly disturbing, but amazing. It's just perfect. This movie is, without a doubt, one of the greatest sci-fi movies ever made. And I'm not talking about the past 10 years, 20 years. I'm talking all time. Like I said, I'm throwing this up there with 2001. I'm throwing it up there with Star Wars. I'm throwing it up there with, The Thing and, and The Day the Earth Stood Still. Truly an amazing film. Strangely enough, another movie that is considered one of the greatest sci-fi horror movies of all time, and easily my favorite movie of all time. John Carpenter's The Thing. Now you may be saying, hold on for a second. The Thing, it's successful, it's popular. Yes, it is. But when it came out, it wasn't. The Thing didn't really do that well in the box office. It did okay, but not kind of like, it didn't make like the money that E.T. made. It didn't make the kind of movie that Alien made. It didn't make, it wasn't like Star Wars. It, when it came out, it even kind of like made the critics go, huh? Because they thought it was gross. They thought that the special effects were off-putting. They just didn't get the movie. And ever since then, what can you say about The Thing other than the fact that it is the greatest sci-fi horror movie ever made? Or one of them, at least, Aliens, it's definitely in that top grouping, you can't go wrong. And you can make arguments, why it should be number one, why it should be number two. But that being said, it is definitely one of the greatest movies that John Carpenter ever directed, along with Halloween, and is easily one of the most important films of the 1980s. I've seen this movie more times than I can count. Literally. I probably more than 100 times. It's amazing. And this Steelbook that I got a couple of weeks ago is just truly amazing. This is a prized movie in my collection. And finally, the one movie that will surprise a lot of people, because as movies go, it is probably one of the greatest sci-fi movies ever made, but it was also one of the biggest flops of its time. Blade Runner. Now, keep in mind, it's 2019. We're actually living in the month that this movie is set, November 2019. When Blade Runner came out, it literally came out the same month as some of the most successful movies of all time. I believe it came out the same time as like E.T. and Tron. It literally came out at a time when there were some truly timeless movies released. This movie did not get the box office that they had hoped. People thought it was kind of confusing. It was dark. It was a little odd. It was sci-fi noir, but just kind of escaped people. And yet, in the years since its release, and of course with its subsequent sequel, it has gone down as one of the greatest cult movies of all time, one of the greatest sci-fi movies of all time, just one of the greatest movies, period. I can't really emphasize how amazing and wonderful this movie is. Along with like The Thing. Now, it's not a horror movie; it's a sci-fi thriller. It's a crime thriller. It's a noir movie. It is so many things, and that's the beauty of this movie. That even when you watch it, like nearly 35, 36 years after its release, there are still things about this movie that are being debated. Is he a replicant? If he's not a replicant, who was the sixth replicant? Just everything about this movie. People wonder, like, with Back to the Future, they want their hoverboards. I want my flying car. I want my spinners. Why don't we have spinners? Like, they're so cool. I love that. But, just so much about this movie. You had, Rutger Hauer was probably one of the greatest villains of all time, but he was also one of the most sympathetic villains. And, he passed away earlier this year, strangely enough. And, rest in peace, Rutger Hauer. You had Daryl Hannah, probably one of her best roles ever. You had Byron James. I believe Byron James, he's one of those famous character actors who always played villains. You had Joanna, was it Joanna? Oh, dear, what was her name? I can't even think of her name. But, you have these... Sean Young. Hell, I can't forget Sean Young. I think she's even on the cover in here, yeah. And this movie, and of course Harrison Ford, that goes without saying, directed by Ridley Scott. This movie, Joanna Cassidy, I think that's what I was thinking of. This movie is just truly amazing and definitely goes down as one of the greatest movies of all time. And, strangely enough, didn't do so well at the box office. So to the critic out there, or to the writer who wanted to criticize Dr. Sleep, keep in mind that your words are probably going to be embarrassing in a couple of years, because you're going to go back and think, damn, what was I thinking? That's okay, because you know what? Just watch the movies and enjoy them. That's what I do. All right. That being said, let's go down the list of some movies I watched this week. Now, I'm trying to get my 300 list down, and ugh, I've got about 4 weeks, no, 5 weeks to put down about 50 movies, which I can do if I make a push for it. So I'm definitely gonna watch a lot of Christmas horror movies, and I'm gonna do a lot of like double features, so that way I can get it caught up. I'll get it done. Mind you, I'll get it done. Plus, I'll also get the podcast, prep going, which I'm already doing. So yay, okay. But movies I did watch. I checked out Return to Nukem High Volume 1. Here's a funny story. Class of Nukem High is one of my all-time favorite trauma movies. I know for most people they'll say it's Toxic Avenger or Terra Firma or Sergeant Kabuki Man. I mean, the one thing about trauma movies is that they are they're not meant to be good movies. I mean, they're bad movies, but they're fun bad movies. Director Lloyd Kaufman is one of the great directors of our day, and the fact that he just makes movies that are fun. I mean, that's what he does. I mean, I follow him on Twitter. I follow him on Instagram. He's such an amazing person. I mean, I almost had a chance to meet him last month, but I couldn't get out to see him. I mean, dang it, I need to go out there and catch him. Next time he's in Texas, I'll go out there, and meet him, because he seems like a really great guy to meet. So, Return to Nukem High is essentially, I don't know, I wouldn't say, I guess it's a follow up to Class of Nukem High, and it's funny because when you first watch the movie, he goes through a montage of Class of Nukem High, and then he talks about the sequels, which weren't that great, and which is funny because I remember posting a couple weeks ago how much I loved the movie, and Lloyd Kaufman replied back saying, "You need to check this movie out. You'll love Return to Nukem High." And hell yeah, it was awesome. It was great. It was wow. It was fun. It was crazy. It was outrageous. It was basically what a trauma movie should be. The cast included Catherine Corcoran, who, for those of you who may not be aware, is one of the up and coming young horror actresses. She's just amazing. I watched her I talked about her last week in the movie Long Lost. But what's also, she's Terrifier. I mean, if you know Terrifier, you know who Catherine Corcoran is, or at least you'll, yeah. But no, she's wonderful. She's a delightful actress and funny and talented, and I think Lloyd Kaufman discovered her. So you know what? That's going to be. It was great seeing her in this role, and I certainly look forward to the follow-up film that was just released. So I'm going to check that out, and hopefully someday I'll get this beautiful poster signed by her and Jenna Cannell. I mean, they need to have their signatures on this poster along with Damien and David. So yeah, it's going to happen. Okay, so the other movie I watched was Unholy Night, which is going to be included in my Christmas. My next Christmas list, which I'm going to be probably calling my Losmas list. Losmas, Merry Losmas, that sort of thing, But Unholy Night was basically it's basically a horror anthology, and it just came out recently, or at least maybe like in the past year or two. It's basically a nurse is working on Christmas Eve, and there's a patient there named what's his name? What was his name? It was Mr. Ibley. And he basically tells her a couple of tales, creepy Christmas-related tales, which were pretty scary and pretty awesome. I mean, it's an independent movie, but this was a nice, fun little movie, and I'm definitely going to include it in my watch list so I can get more people to watch it. Now, I thought it was kind of funny that his name was Mr. Ibley, because that actually gives you a little hint as to who he is, because if I need to look up more about biblical or satanic lore or stuff like that. I just remember the name Ibley from the original Battlestar Galactica. It was a character that Patrick McNeat played, Count Ibley. He was a figure that they encounter who promised to rescue them and get them away from the Cylons, but he turned out to be an evil force. So that gives you a little clue right there. All right, and the last movie that I watched was a movie called The Barn. Now, this is one that I heard about the other day, and I'll tell you, I'll say this about The Barn. It's I believe it's on was it on Shudder or was it on Amazon Prime? I think it was on Prime. If you see the movie, watch it. It's a independent movie, low budget movie, but it was fun. It's a great 80s throwback movie, and I'll give you one good reason to watch it. Practical special effects. I mean, not the best out there, but great, fun, creative deaths. And it would have been a great Halloween movie to watch, which I missed out on, including on my Halloween list. But you know what? I'm going to include it, and I'm going to recommend it for next Halloween because it's a great scary Halloween movie, and it was fun and entertaining, and I'm glad I caught it today. So definitely recommending that one. Now, of course, that being said, I had mentioned my Christmas watch list, the Losman list, which is going to come out next week starting because that's December 1st. So keep an eye on that. I did a list last year that had 24, Christmas related horror movies, and I'm going to repost that on my blog and on my Twitter account so you can go back and check out some of those movies. That particular list included some of the more famous ones like both Black Fridays, Krampus, Gremlins, and and then some other ones that included like Santa Sleigh and you better watch out. So definitely great movies to check out, and I'm gonna watch 24, 25 more Christmas related horror movies. Now, of course, most of them are gonna be more obscure movies because I watched all the popular ones last year, but I'm still gonna watch them, and then I'm gonna write small reviews on them and post them daily on my blog so that we can keep track of kind of like a little advent calendar. Ooh, I'm gonna do go a Christmas horror advent calendar. Ooh, great idea. Losman comes up with some great ideas. All right. Well, that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and close this out. So if you want to catch me out there on the internets, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. I'm out there somewhere. And you know what? We'll just call it a night. And once again, that's the lowdown with Losman.